Sharon asked me to come and say a few words. I just was very happy to come because libraries really meant everything to me when I was a kid. I was in 3rd grade, and I was one of the pains in the bus that Melinda talked about. I was that guy, I gotta be honest. I was chewing gum, and the librarian, Mrs. Fishkin, said, "Hey, spit your gum out, sit down, stop making noise, and I'm going to bring you something to read." I said, that's not going to happen. I don't read, that's not what I do. And so she brought over a Garfield book, and I opened it up, and it was kind of interesting. There were cartoons, it looked like it was fun, I like cats, and this cat in particular seemed to love lasagna. This thing could not get enough lasagna to save its life. Embarrassingly, it wasn't until about 5 or 6 years later that I learned that it was actually lasagna, and it became one of my favorite meals. I think that's probably, unrelated, but then, after that happened, that was my entrance, that was my moment. Okay, reading's okay, libraries are all right. I don't have to be outside all the time. That's when the big moment happened. I came across this book, Where the Sidewalk Ends by Silverstein. And I opened it up, and I started reading some of these rhymes, and I looked at his little cartoons, and inside it was as if an explosion happened. I was in the library, and I had been told that Miss Fishkin would be very, well-behaved and not talk. But when I started to read this inside, this is something that kind of happened inside. I loved it. And I went home, and I went to my basement, and I started pacing, because that's what I do. I don't know why I pace sometimes. And I was walking around my basement, and I was thinking, what if I can write some of this too? I bet I could do it. I'm going to try. And my house in Baltimore, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, my house, it would creak all the time, which is a nightmare for a kid. It would make noise constantly. So, all of a sudden, I channeled my own Shel Silverstein, and I started to think, it comes and it goes. What it is, no one knows. It could be Tom, it could be Ted, it could be the return of the living dead. It could be Freddy from Elm Street. It could be the thump of Frankenstein's feet. That's what began for me. It was so much fun, it was so exciting, and I said to myself, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that was the beginning. And from there forward, I spent so much time in the libraries, both my school library and the public library. I mean, they would bring in all these great performers, musicians, writers. You couldn't get me out of that place. So, when Sharon asked me to come here and speak, absolutely. Now, sorry. I gotta admit too, every time I get a microphone in my hand, I'm a kid of the 80s, like the rap movement. I just want to do like a beatbox. I can't help it. I need to do it, but I will do it. I'll spare you, but I want to do it.
Do it! Yeah!
So when I, recently, a couple months ago, I did a reading of my book. I do write children's books. This is my first book. It's called What Daddy Did Today, A Father's Bedtime Story. And I've been touring around to a bunch of different schools, both here in Florida and other states, reading in the libraries. And I came to Pinecrest Library, I think 2 months ago, and had a bunch of kids there, and I did my big reading and performance, and it was this, really every place I go, it's such a joy and just thrill to see the kids' responses and interact, and to see how they can kind of light up, because they do love stories. And it really is so important to their imagination, to their creative development, and libraries not just give us stories, they give us places to be a community, The library is the source of community, and as we have more and more technology keeping us more and more apart from each other, we need these sources to keep us together as human beings. So I think what's going on here, people, and your enthusiasm to keep libraries intact is beautiful, and I'm happy to be here. But I want to tell you a quick story. When I was doing the performance at the library, Sharon introduced me. I came up, I was real excited, I jumped around with the kids, I did my whole thing. And there was one little girl, she was sitting off to the side, these big bottle cap glasses. And I was just about to start my story, and she looks over at me and she says, "Don't read." I was like, she's like, "I don't like when people, please don't read. I don't like when people read." I was like, I mean, please? I'm here, you seem to like it. I bet you didn't like jelly beans before you tried them, and then you tried them and you liked them, just give me a chance. So I went, she's like, okay. So I did my whole thing, did my whole What Daddy Today story. I got to the end, I felt good about it, I felt a pretty good reading of it. And just as I got to the very end, took one glance over at her, and she said, with perfect comedic timing, "No, I don't like it." Broke my spirit. But it's okay. I've recovered. It's been really just a tremendous experience for me that I've written this book, and I have actually what Mommy did today coming next, so I'm really excited about that. But before I jump out of here, I'll tell you one more adult story I wrote. And, I like to write rhyming stories. This is what I like to do. I don't know why. If it doesn't rhyme, I can't get my brain to be as interested in it. So, this is a fable, and I think it applies because the message of a noble purpose, which is what we have here, it's resounding. And sometimes when you have a situation like this where you see that the odds are against you, and you seem like you don't want to smile anymore, you don't really want to, you don't feel happy about it anymore, but you're trying to hide that. Just know that the mission is noble, and the result, it'll show. It'll show at the end. I really believe in that. So here we go. It's called The Fabled Land. Amidst a whirlwind of debris and a parade of drifting sand, 3 young men set out to sea to find the fabled land. One sailed left, one sailed right, the other forged straight ahead. All 3 would sail into the night, but 2 would end up dead. The first young man was Charles X, once a soldier, now a king, known for his great courage and strength, and the suffering he would bring. He set his sail in his royal gown, his hair all freshly curled. Once he had the fabled town, well, then he had the world. The second young man was in search as well, but his search was for fame. A master of the ocean swell. Master was his name. When it came to waters, he was an ace, and he wanted the world to see that if someone could find that far-off place, that someone he would be. Now the third young man was not the same as the others who set a sail. A common man who had no name, on a search of a larger scale. He was lost in life and wanted to know the fate for which he's bound. So to the fabled land he'll go, where answers can be found. You see, the fabled land is just that, a fable that's believed to be true. They say that it's where heaven's at, and that's when the fable grew. So the 3 young men pursued their quest beneath a rising moon. But as the sun was laid to rest, nature changed its tune. The day upon a nice smooth sail, the tide was flat and low. But with the night came wind, hail, and a massive undertow. It grabbed a hold of Charles X and crushed his regal ship. He fought the tide with all his strength, but was strangled by its grip. The sea had claimed the first young man, his hair no longer curled. He'd never had the fabled land. He'd never ruled the world. The second young man remained afloat in the face of the raging tide, till a blast of lightning struck his boat and knocked it on its side. He was dragged straight down by the undertow, where it grew cold and dark. It was there he found a brand new foe in the form of a hungry shark. He swam fast, but the shark swam faster and was nipping at his heel. To his fellow man, he was known as Master. But to the shark, he was just a me. When it came to waters, he wasn't ace, and he wanted the world to see that if someone could find that far-off place, that someone he'd never be. The storm approached the third young man and attacked with all its might. He thought of escape, but had no plan, so he surrendered without a fight. As certain death consumed his mind, and things were looking dim, the answer he set out to find suddenly came to him. A vision flashed through his head of the place where life was grand. It was heaven, like the fable said, but it was not the fabled land. It was a place he already knew, a place that he knew well. Now to get there, all he had to do was outlast this stormy hell. He lowered his head and took the pound of the charging ocean tide. He held his breath and stood his ground where the other men had died. The wind let out its final puff as the raging storm gave way. The tide that was so mean and rough was now an easy sway. He grabbed a hold of the third young man and carried him ashore to the exact same spot where he began his quest the day before. From his knees, he thanked the sky and collapsed into the sand. But soon he was awakened by her soft and gentle hand. She lay awake the whole night through, praying for his life. For him, her heart was pure and true, proud to be his wife. She fell upon him from above, her face submerged in tears. He was the one who had her love, and would for all his years. 'Twas her that flashed through his mind in the water when he learned that everything he sought to find, he'd find when he returned. The third young man spent the night searching for a myth. Instead, he found that life's just right when you love who you live with. Slowly, they began to rise from their huddle in the sand. He pulled her close, looked in her eyes, and found the fable.